Welcome back to the Share International Seminar. And our next panel discussion will be discussed on Thailand Micro-Credentials outlook. In this session, you will learn about micro-credentials can transform higher education and how its implementation would be beneficial for industry and business in Thailand. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome again our moderator, Ajahn Bundit Thipakorn, and our distinguished speakers, Dr. Klangjai Sithitavorn, Assistant to the President for Educational Development at Mongkut University of Technology, Thonburi, Ms. Naowarat Bumrungchit, former Senior Vice President and former Director of Academic for CP, Leadership Institute CPO Public Company Limited, and the speaker will be on Zoom. And the last speaker is Mr. Gittitouch Apisaksirikul, Chief Executive Officer at Goldbridge Academia, Thailand. Please give a big applause to the speakers and the moderator, please.
Thank you very much. Well, for this section, it will be a little bit different from the previous section, and we will start with Dr. Klangjai, who will give the broad view of KMUTT Micro-Credentials, and then we will have Kun Naowarat and Kun Gittitouch to be the commentator. And I would like the floor to participate as a commentator also. This will be give the broad view of what KMUTT thinking about how to do the micro-credential and etc. Then we need the input from all of you. Okay, the input from two of our panelists, Kun Naowarat and Kun Gittitouch again, and then the floor. Okay, so we should start with Dr. Klangjai, please.
Well, hello everyone. Hi, and hello everyone in Zoom as well. Thank you for having me. Welcome to Thailand as well. You know, for a lot of you who came a long, long way and may be listening, you know, in any part of the world. For a lot of you, this country is probably the land of smile, and maybe for some of you, it's the land of a fun tuk-tuk ride. You know, a tuk-tuk, yeah. But let me use this tuk-tuk as the starting point of our humble story I am about to tell you. You see, behind this smiling face, creative city, we also have our own problems. Do you know that Thailand is one of the most unequal countries in the world? If you compare the poorest 50% to the richest 10%, you see the income gap that getting higher and higher. The rich are getting richer, you know. When you see a newspaper, seeing that we have very low unemployment rate, don't be surprised if you dig deeper, you see that 83% of them are unskilled. Our country are in a deep need of technology and innovation. And we wish that our tuk-tuk had Tesla inside. I put out this infographic, you know, nice and cute, for you to have a look of this holistic and demographic of our country. But in reality, this is what happened. Our learners are dropping off, you know, from the normal education system just to earn a living. And COVID-19 doesn't make any situations better. We have people living alongside of the train track. You might, you know, seen this in the news. Majority of Thai people are not wealthy. These are what you see on the street. I'm sure the reason why all of you are here because you want to see education better. So let me call out the educator in you to help to put our hand together and think about how we can help people to have the right skill so they can have the freedom and choices to do what they really want to do. If you look at a university from the holistic perspective, the majority of university, would have, more or less this kind of picture in mind. You have one side a university that we have put up the very academic environment, a broad-based generic development for a whole 4-year degree that we say that after you graduate, you can go and be that. The 4-year degree, at the end of the 4 years, we sort of like set them free, or AKA, they are on their own. Getting a job or not, no idea. But it's no longer our responsibility, isn't it? On the other side of the world, the business world needs job-specific competency. They need performance. They want people with agility. The skill that this morning we listened is changing so fast. How do we put these two worlds together, or at least working together, so we can have a better world? If you are like me, I'm sure you do, you think about how to make higher education useful to more people. And this is how it goes in my head. It's sort of like kickstart a chain of questions without answer. So I was thinking, hey, wouldn't it be a good idea if credential equal employability? I'm speaking to my colleagues here. And if we can make education more affordable, easier to access, how about we guarantee the value that we promise our customer, our learner? But what are the competencies? I spent 10 years in a university without working in industry. I have no idea what would be the context, how it is used, to what problem that we are trying to solve, and what are the business goals? Who do we ask? How do we make education real? On top of that, we have this idea of co-design and co-assess job-specific competency with the industry. Who would love to work with us? We are traditional, organization and university who sort of like slowly drifting away from the real world. How to intentionally guarantee that learner can do? Seems like very easy thing to say, but very hard to do, because you have to make sure the teacher know how to measure and foster learning effectively. But have to do this quicker. The world is changing. We have to be more flexible and maintain that high quality of the higher education. After thinking about question after question, my head goes like that, right? And it is so unfortunate, I listened this morning, that I have not realized that IBM have this enterprise design thinking for solving complex problems. Yeah, so I did not use that. My personal choice is meditation. And, just focusing on what we can do. So this is how KMUTT embarked on this, I would say, never-ending experiment of micro-credential. We did not call it micro-credential at the start, but we know that we want to do this, a job-specific, competency-based learning design. And it's going to be bite-sized because not everyone has the time and opportunity to come to the university on 9 to 5 to learn with our students. It has to be self-paced, and it has to be very real. We want to get the credibility of, education back. Most importantly, I put it last, we want to be able to work with an educator, a teacher, one teacher at a time. Because from my experience, working with a lot of teachers at a time is a nightmare. Our aspiration is to design education that keep up with the unpredictable world of work, so we can upskill, reskill again and again and again. With this direction, we built for lifelonglearning.org, which is a small, flexible, non-degree, job-specific, competency-based learning and credentialing system. And it's based on a 3 concepts putting together. Number 1, we believe that the best predictor of how someone will perform in a job is work sample. Show me what you can do. And we're going to put that work sample of the evidence of competency in a digital badge that can be verified and keep it with a blockchain technology backend. And we want to design learning to be stackable, so we can build one competency on top of each other without having to design a complex competency all in one go. We started off this project called Let's Make a Big Impact by Thinking Small, but it's nothing small about it. In January 2020, we started off with put our hand together and, put our head together, and thinking about like, how are we going to do this? We have no idea what it is we're going to do. So we call up Digital Promise. There are organizations in the US that experimenting with micro-credential before us. So they came and flew in, just before COVID-19 started and the country was closed down. We have an executive workshop, assessor workshop, and micro-credential design workshop. We adopt their framework and also build our own. We also did many pilots of micro-credential with Digital Promise and also sort of like experimenting about micro-credential on our own platform. We did a user research, which is very great, that, for once, a lot of people telling us the truth about how they think about us, how they want the university to be. What is their expectation that you should design learning to be like this, please? We did work with a lot of educator, teacher, assessor training, working with the teacher, majority from KMUTT. And I would say the magic of it, of working, designing micro-credential is when someone, starting on a journey of designing a small learning like micro-credential, they learn that, this is a specific competency. On what method that I want to design this micro-credential or how it should be demonstrated? What are the research behind it? And what are the real-world evidence of this competency? And also, how do I want the learner, to do or perform on what level? If you ask me if educators like it, not really. But they're coming out of this journey, be a different person. This is learning for educator. We are sort of like pressing on this problem of, number 1, articulating the learning outcome. Number 2, designing performance criteria rubric. Teacher hates that. Number 3, try to measure the effectiveness of their own teaching. So we know how well we are doing and we can improve. We also did adopt a framework. This is from the colleague of mine. Her name is June, if you're listening here. The competency prism. And we realized that, hey, if we want, the business side to understand that this learning is for real, after success or graduated from this very small unit of learning, a person can do it. We have to focus on the DAS. So the digital badge can really encapsulate the real work sample and workplace-based assessment within it. We also, in August 2021, we also do some more experiment. You see that a lot of educators coming out of that process, a little bit crooked, but they are fine. We also do sort of like more research on micro-credential ecosystem and piloting a proof of concept pilot with a few of our good friends, a couple of departments, a few students, and more or less people know, like we know, like our family and friends. This, in October 2021, I would say that that's how I name it, the dark age of micro-credential, in my opinion. I was lost the perspective, I don't know what I was doing. And I have this question keep going on and on. Why you are so slow? But you have to do this, it's a great thing, My boss here say, hey, keep going, it's great. Yeah. Teachers say, I won't do it because I don't understand what it is you are trying to do. So when they understand, do you know what they say? They say, too hard. I won't do it either, So we face this challenge in the middle of crisis again. And I feel like, should we stop or should we keep going? So our approach, I think you should know by now, we meditate, and focusing on what we can do. I believe in one thing that, when you have a problem, you go back to your customer. So this is what we did. This year, we're doing a very sort of like a grand user research. We invite a lot of people from the industry, from the different sizes of company, different organization, and we did case study gathering, remote in-depth interview, and analysis and synthesis of the information we have. And we found out that when the business are looking for people, it's not just the expertise or proficiency in the job they are looking for. They're looking for learning ability. Can this person learn? Fundamental knowledge, do they have this basic, cover? Communication skill, personality, and attitude, because different companies also have different culture. We also realize that not all companies are equal. Small startup company want a flexible generalist. They want someone all-rounded, flexible, agile, and ready to change. But if you're talking to like a modern corporation, like a modern geek, they need in-depth, broad-based, job-ready competency and someone who can communicate well. But if you talk to conservative organization, they want blank canvas, fundamental knowledge and willingness to work and learn whatever they got told to. I did micro-credential, not just by myself, but with a lot of support of my team. You see a lot of them here, my bosses, my colleagues and my friends. And I get asked a lot of this question. Hey, Jay, how many micro-credentials you have done so far? I'm actually getting sick of answering this question. Number one, because it's not many. Number two is, does it matter? It's not a number game. It is not about how many micro-credentials we can design or create. It is our hopes and dreams that we can help teachers to do what? To think more about the effective learning the micro-credentials have brought us. So our teacher can stop trying to put or fit the learning outcome they have to the content they want to teach, and maybe think about the specific learning outcome or competency. And maybe think about what would be the real-world evidence that someone can do the work or, get a job. And maybe evaluate the effectiveness of their teaching. So we can help a recognizer or the business. Instead of just standing here and looking at them saying, we are hiring, we are not fighting, we can say, hey, let's co-design and co-assess micro-credential. We can help you to make recruitment and people development journey, a more pleasant, faster, evidence-based, and effective. We can use micro-credential to do what? Do a job ad. This job requires 1, 2, 3 specific skills. Micro-credential also can help verify skill and competency. We can use micro-credential to screening candidate, right? So we know this one can do this particular job, this one can't. We also can use micro-credential to evaluate, identify talent, develop person to make sure they have a career path and relocate people to the right job. I put this at last, but they are the most important. The one we care most is our learner. For once, we will have the opportunity to create this education system for life and for all. For once, our learner doesn't have to eat the whole box of cookies of 4 years degrees, Maybe they just need one. And for once, we can stop calling a person looking through their resume and see, oh, what is your GPA? You are a 3.0, 2.8, 3.5. And we can look at the person from the unique ability they have. With micro-credential, I really hope, we really hope, that we can have education pathway. So, an alternative to the degree. You can use it as a complementary. You can use it, to go along with it. Who cares? But we will have the education pathway for employability. We can help our learner that, someone who's ready to do the work, but they don't have to wait until the last day, until they graduate to get a job. We, university, can be more relevant to the world again. And when the day comes, I do hope that, our graduates can really stop hiding behind their own degrees, but doesn't know what they can do. But they can standing high, and up tall, and be able to tell people the unique ability that I have, and know exactly what they can do. If you want to take away from this journey, or to take away from the story that I just told you about, we are here, climbing up a little mountain very slowly. And today, what did you get? You get an idea about micro-credential. But idea is free, and idea is everywhere. Today, you might get 1 or 2 ideas that you feel that, this is a good idea. But it will mean nothing if you're not doing it. So I call for educators in the Zoom, over here, everywhere. If you think that you want to make education more useful using micro-credential, then join us at forlifelonglearning.org, and I really hope I will see you there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Klangjai is give you some information about what, why, and how we doing micro-credential at KMUTT, which is an example. And then she also comment and put a lot of criticism back to the boss, her boss. So I said, I'm not the only one as her boss, but seem to be she directly, every time that she's talking about boss, she look at me. Even put me as a cartoon on her slide, if you can recognize that. Okay, so this is spread out everywhere. Every time that she have a PowerPoint, she will have my picture in there, my cartoon. So I think it's at a time that you already heard the information about the micro-credential that the community. But the main point that she pointed out is not that I want to repeat it again. It's not the number of micro-credential. We want to change something. And that change is create the value for the society, especially for the community of higher education. How much value we want to contribute to change of the future of higher education. So I think it's now I would like to have commentator. Can we get from the Kun Naowarat first because she is on the Zoom. So she not really sleep during the Zoom. Are you okay, Kun Naowarat? I think it's I keep the Kun Naowarat, please. I put you on the first person and then Kun Gittitouch later. Thank you, Kun Naowarat.
All right. Happy to be here, sir. And thank you for inviting me. I would speak briefly and only focusing on what the real world of, let me see. Okay, let me share my slide. I'm only talking in terms of HRD and HIM. And we'll take only a little bit of time for what prepared. The situation of our country is quite difficult, especially in this situation of COVID. We have minimal resources. We have also inflation and regressions coming. Let me see. Okay. Existing in Thailand in terms of work environment that we use, we depend on organization like PMAT, Personnel Management Association of Thailand, and also the Thailand Professional Quality. But actually, it's targeted on only people who work and only profession that is SME. Okay, but when I heard about what you are providing, I come to think of our agenda of preparing workforce to the future. And we actually, as an HRD and HR, we need to track current skill sets of people. We need to identify gap in skills development. And we need to intensify people to pursue additional skills development. So micro-credentials is one of the tools in place that could be a representation of competency or achievement earned through participation, progression, completion, and demonstration of learning. What more do we need? I look into your website and I found that, okay, we in existing world right now in Thailand, we have a certificate of learning outcome. Yet, when micro-credential come in place, I think it will answer to what we actually need, because the idea of collecting skills that is proven and clearly, explicitly answer to the skill set that we need, especially for future need. Okay, I look into, let's assume that I will use, as my previous job is develop leaders. Okay, I look into your meta skill life and work skills and try to build up the stack. Okay, first, wow, I see your psychometric tools of identifying leadership strength. And let's say I have one of my talent in mind. Okay, and I pick according to what I will build him. Okay, as a leader. The second one I pick is managing diverse leadership style. No, according to the leadership strength that they have. Okay, let's see. I put them into a set of the first stack. Okay, number one is identify leadership strength, managing diverse leadership, transformation leaders, generating inspirational motivation, and providing intellectual stimulation, then followed by exhibiting individual consideration. And last but not least, he needs to be self-motivated. So that's the first batch. Let's put them into this open batch that you may design for him. This is, let's say this year, complete 6, and then coming year maybe complete 8. Okay, so this is a very good way that we can go further with micro-credentialing. We are more focused on specific skill and faster to actually complete, and more personalized, self-directed learning experience with the ability to tailor cluster to fit career goals and responsibility. Besides that, it can be stacked strategically by skill, job, and complete a degree program, even through MOOC that we are using now for some university even. Okay, it can also be stacked to fill a skill gap for position and most of all performance. Yeah, the working platform is performance based. So, and it's actually answer to the question of lifelong learning by taking this digital credential accreditation with us for the rest of our life. This is fantastic. Okay, and you actually answer to the outcome-based learning by emphasizing competency. This is we are using now in the organization. We move beyond competency to capability right now, and this ensure outcome and learning by doing. So your models that is exhibit on the website answer to our question to how we can better way to actually identify the candidate who clearly demonstrate specific competency and skills. That is fabulous. Okay, and the challenge that it solves individual by providing insight into our professional development and demonstrate effort to improve and also exhibit the ongoing professional development and embrace continuing learning lifestyle. That is the fantastic way, because life usually ends after college. And once enter the workplace, some workplace have this training to actually move the worker or employee forward, but some do not. Okay, and they themselves have to seek the way actually to progress in their career. Okay, and it's for individual also. Another one is it's intensify ourselves to pursue new skills, especially the skill we are lacking right now to go forward in the future. Is future skills. And we will construct micro-credential system in an ongoing and can encourage learner to learn more, participate in a greater number or variety of skill development opportunity, and create a career path for success, like Dr. Klangjai has mentioned. If this become real, it's an answer to a lifelong learning, really. And for organization especially, HR actually have standing, on the side of employee and also organization. If employee move, organization move, we can go forward. And it's answer to the progress of both sides. Okay. For the organization, is identify area for improvement as well as distribution of talent and gap, and is increase competition, productivity, and engagement, and is demonstrate a culture of learning. This is actually the best way to keep the organization ongoing, to be an intellectual and answer to the performance. So by leveraging micro-credential tied to competency for project new roles, we can give people straightforward understanding of what they need to do to succeed and distinguish our organization as one that genuinely care about enabling our employee to progress. And it does help create alignment with skill need for continuous improvement across sectors. Last but not least, micro-credential is not a replacement of traditional learning method. It has a variable role to play within learning framework. At first round, I would end here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kun Naowarat. I think it's you seem to be you really support the micro-credential idea or the framework, and maybe we should invite you to talk with the faculty member in ACT KMUTT. Okay, but
I'm retired.
Yeah, I
I
like
work
her
as my own will.
Okay, I like her last statement. This is a view from HRM and HRD experience. And I really like her last statement that she said micro-credential is really important part of changing our education to be lifelong learning. It's a learning framework. It's not really replace the traditional training that we are doing right now, but it's a new way, it's a new method. Okay, so if we would like to move on to the lifelong learning or support the lifelong learning for the higher education. Now, I would like to see the view from the Kun Gittitouch from Govich.
Hello. Oh. I think Kun Naowarat kind of captures what micro-credentials can be in the private sector very well. I think from the other perspective that I'd like to add in is rather on the key challenges that if we were to scale micro-credential forward, what would the challenge be? Like when I listen to this project, I've been working with Ajahn Klangjai for several months already, and I'm very impressed and very interested in this idea because we come to a realization that universities generate graduates at a very constant rate or a high pace. However, we get to the problem that I myself as a recruiter also come to realization that they are not fit for any of the job openings that we have, or when they fit to the job opening, they're only fit around 60% or 80% of it, and we have a problem identifying the right candidates. And I think from the perspective of the recruiter, it's a challenge of how can they identify the right talent, and as the presentation said, there are more than just having the knowledge itself, having the expertise itself. It's just the culture fit, being able to learn and being able to actually perform in the job itself also. So every time the recruiter recruits someone in or sends someone into the interview, they technically get their neck hanging also, because if they send someone that doesn't actually match what the company want, the company would just question them, or what are they doing? And if they were to pass the interview and get hired and ended up not being able to perform, then the recruiter will be questioned again also why you send this person in, or why you can't evaluate the person well enough. I think it becomes a big challenge that then recruiter has to be very, very strict on filtering any candidates in. So let's say 1,000 of resumes, they might end up with like 2 or 3 candidates, and they're not even sure that those 2 or 3 is the right candidate or not. It just happens to be the 3 that seems to be the best among the thousands, and the best is just as best as they can see from the resume, as best as they can see from the statement of purpose or an email that is sent to the company. And it brings to the problem that these things is not enough for them, for the company to see whether the person can work well within the company or not. Maybe the interview might see the culture fit, whether the person can communicate effectively, being able to work with the company effectively, but the skill themselves is a very questionable part that the person has to perform first to be able to see if they can do it or not. So micro-credentials comes to support this from a recruiter perspective in the sense that it increased the speed and the accuracy of them being able to select the right candidate into the interview. So they might have to process less number of resume, or they can send in more people into the interview. So from that perspective, the MC itself should create this situation for the recruiter. So they can work more efficiently, they can work more effectively, they can reduce the number of, let's say, the number of the people required to do going through resumes or sending people into interview, or they can assess the employee throughout their time inside the company much more effectively if they have MCs to refer to as a benchmark of the skills, or they can issue out maybe MCs to the employees also when they achieve certain outcome from their work. So for MC to be successful, being able to scale, it should create these situations for the recruiter. So even though we can say that MC prove that the person is competent on certain skill set, they can express their skill, but it doesn't create a more efficient or more a productive environment for the company, then the MC itself wouldn't be adopted into the system. So I think that one of the biggest challenge is turning the output of the MC into the benefit of the company themselves. So as long as the company doesn't realize this benefit, it's very hard to change the previous system that they're doing. I think that's part of the bigger challenge, taking the MCs into the private sectors or having people recognize these things. And I think from the earner perspective, so for the learner perspective, the MC itself is very interesting in the sense that it shortens the learning period. So let's say that technically maybe from a 6-month course or a 10-month course, it can be shortened into maybe 2 or 3 months, because there are several aspects that they can actually able to perform, but only just several points that they need to, let's say, equip more, or needs a proof of competency for them to being able to prove to their employers or their prospective hirer. So I think that the bigger challenge would be, I mean, as a person who is hired to have a job, I think it's easy to display their skills. They have their work records, they can use their current work to portray their competencies and being able to be evaluated in the system. However, for those who are unemployed, it might be a bigger challenge. How can they provide a working evidence for the evaluator to work on? And so if we were to resolve this problem from the perspective of, so we can give you a mock project for them to work on, how can we be sure as the assessor that we're providing them an actual project that reflects what's happening inside the company enough that when we evaluate them, give them the credential, and the recognizer would recognize us. So I think the challenge would be pretty different for those who have the job. How transparent can they be with their job that they wouldn't break the confidentiality of the company to earn the credentials? And for those who are unemployed, how can we provide them an actual project that they can work on that the recognizer would recognize us? So I think these are like tiny things that when we try to make it practical from the conceptual or the theory of how the MC would work into the actual implementation into the system, I think these things come into play, that it is supposed to create tangible benefit for all the party involved in the system. The learner would learn if the recognizer would recognize, and both of them would at the end of the day encourage more assessor into the system, or encourage assessor to be more practical onto the system. I think the biggest challenge is to create this ecosystem for them to work on hand in hand, and when it works, I think it will reinforce themselves and it will grow bigger and bigger by themselves. So that's why I really like the idea that micro-credential is not just about the number, because once you can get a certain stack that multiple company would recognize that this stack represent an actual, let's say, an effective manager in a very specific fields, and all the recognizer or all the companies that require this specific position in the specific industry do recognize, then I think that's one of the biggest success for the project already, and we can scale from one stack to another stack to a bigger stack. So a day one challenge would be to make a viable stack that all stakeholders do recognize. And after that, I think the second and the third would come easily.
Thank you very much. Kun Gittitouch. I believe that your company is very young company, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you will see the example from the first section is very big company, IBM and Midpon, which is a very big and had been in this industry for very long. And then we have experience from the people who, like Kun Naowarat, who work with the HRD and HRM, especially for the CPO. And then Kun Gittitouch, with the from small company. But seem to be, I think, in order to make a MC work, you have to look for the value, the impact that you make it for other people. Other people is mean that is outside the economy, outside the university. Is the company, the private sector is maybe the big one, but the biggest one will be the workforce themselves, and the country. So I think, Michael, even though we show you more likely the private sector is from the industry or the company and anything, but I think the most important one that the outside or the demand that we have to listen to or try to make an impact is the people or is the workforce who live in the society. Is the society themselves, is the one that maybe we should have some micro-credential, like Kun Naowarat said something about the leadership. The leadership is for everyone that should have the leadership. It may make themselves, they can increase their employability and I mean, it's not just only the hard skill or the professional skill. Okay, so, well, and any comment from the floor or from the online, the Zoom? Do we have it?
Yeah, we do have our questions from the online participants, but may I firstly have questions from the floor on site, please? Any comments or any questions? Okay, please.
Okay, two, okay.
Hi, my name is Dia, and I'm from Bundit University. Okay, I think I should stand. All right. Okay, hi, my name is Dia, and I'm from Bundit University, Jakarta, Indonesia. So I think I really enjoyed learning more about micro-credentials implementations in Thailand, and thank you very much for it. And I think I'm quite agreeing with what Ms. Naowarat was actually saying, that perhaps micro-credentials can be considered as a supplementary, not actually a replacement. So what I have here is actually two questions. So perhaps the first one is actually how to differentiate the expected learning outcomes for classic university courses and a specific micro-credential module. Because then again, those courses offered by the universities should also be able to train their students to be, let's say, transformative leaders, for example. Yeah, that's one of the very common topics for micro-credentials modules. Or can we say, again, I would like to repeat that micro-credentials are actually offering supplementary knowledge that a student may not get from their set courses at the university. And the second one is still following up my first questions, is actually in order to address, these skeptical faculty members or even the anxious academics or university leaders, is it correct if I can say that micro-credentials can be considered or should be considered as a top-up programs for students to be job ready? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any response from Dr. Klangjai.
Okay. Thank you, dear, for the question. And hello, welcome back to Thailand again. The first question, I'll just take the first question first. The differentiate, how do we differentiate learning outcome? It's a good question. So far, what we have, we use the prism of competency, like the one in presentation. It have 4 stages, right? And we're trying to sort of like divided it into 2 sections. The first top of the pyramid, which is like show and does, we sort of like angle that for employability. So the learning outcome that used to sort of like answer job-specific competency, something that's useful in a job, not too small, but it have to be useful. Let's say, if you say, write a circle, this is a learning outcome too, right? But it's too small, insignificant. It have to be useful in your career, right? You can use that and craft that to be a single competency, and we aim it to decide like for micro-credential. But for the bottom 2, the sort of like understanding, the fundamental knowledge, the one that necessary, right, for the academic accomplishment, and it can be topped up with the one on the 2 on top. We want to use micro-credential sort of like just as a framework for OBE design, with a single learning outcome, design with one single learning outcome, so it's not too complex. If you sort of like looking at how we use learning outcome right now in the academic environment, we have a learning outcome for a subject. One subject is 15 weeks. So that is quite a big learning outcome, for a learner to accomplish, right? But if you don't use the week, you don't follow the sort of like the time, but you look at the competency or what the learner can do itself, it's probably going to be super useful for us to break that down or look at it from different perspectives. Or what the learner can do, is it significant in the academic sense? If it is, we bring it out and decide it into, we also call micro-credential, but it's not for employability, and decide it into OBE, one single outcome, try to guarantee that single learning outcome, and also decide assessment, everything around it. That is our approach, and that's how we try to differentiate it. That's the first question. Second question, as a top up, yes, and I don't know, maybe you can help me with that. Our graduate right now, they can choose, it's their choice, to pursue micro-credential, right? After talking with a lot of them, we also realized that a lot of our graduates feel that they don't want to be put in a fixed time or time-based environment like semester. Some of them can already do something like within a subject. So, it's an interesting question when they ask, like, if I pass this, can I just go to the next one? Yeah, but we don't have that sort of system for them. So micro-credential can be a great help, to let the learner show us what they can, then they can move on whenever they're ready or not ready. Yeah. Anything you want to add on that? No?
It's not my part. Okay, can we have a question from one more person? I think he is representative from Malaysia, I think.
Hello. Yeah, thank you. Actually, my questions are very similar to Dr. Dia's question.
I see.
I'm Eddie from Malaysia, by the way. All right. I have 2 questions, but these 2 questions are not my questions, but they are frequently asked questions. I always get these 2 questions whenever people ask me about micro-credentials. Right, the first question is always about the faculty members' competence and commitment. So when we talk about competence, we are referring to their ability to design courses into micro-credentials. Right? So that has always been one big challenge to many institutions. because for them to understand what micro-credentials is all about is a challenge on its own. So that will require some interventions before micro-credentials can be developed. So perhaps you can share your experience with us. How do we go about doing that, developing the competence? And of course, leading to it is commitment. You know, I seem to hear that there are probably some resistance at some point of time, how the faculty members can come in. I'm already loaded with so much work, and now I have to do something additional. Right? So how do we go about this? How do we address this issue? Right? And the next question probably, again, Dr. Dia has asked that to Dr. Klangjai and perhaps Kun Naowarat as well. One of the easiest ways for people to design micro-credentials is to take it from an existing academic program. I take from the program, then I break it down. I break it down into smaller components, just in time, just enough, just for me. Right, so I use that concept and design a micro-credential. We are also talking about the potential of micro-credentials leading to an academic qualification. I think Dr. Dia raised that earlier. So we all know that in every academic program, there are a set of learning outcomes to be achieved. So when we unbundle the program, we unbundle the learning outcomes. So there are a lot of learning outcomes are very relevant to competencies, apply, being able to do, but there are also some learning outcomes that are soft skills in nature: ethics, professionalism, communication, teamwork, you know, and things like that. So when we unbundle, what will be the effect on the learning outcomes when we rebundle the micro-credentials into a full-fledged program again? So are we expecting to see that in future, those who gain their qualifications through micro-credentials, a stack of micro-credentials, are we expecting to see that the way the learning outcomes, the extent of which the learning outcomes are achieved, will be very different from our conventional students or graduates? So thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. Should I take? Oh. Okay. I'll answer the last question first. And thank you for asking. We are, you know, like you reading our minds, like we're thinking the same thing. Working on OBE and learning outcome unbundles, you know, education, make it into a Lego piece, you know, build on top of each other so they can have their own learning pathway is magical thinking, you know, give me adrenaline. The problem is, if we have a curriculum or a program that designed based on OBE so well, you know, with program level learning outcome, breaking it down to year LO, breaking it down to CLO, breaking it down, they understand every piece of it. You unbundle things is not hard at all, right? The problem is the majority of our programs are not like that. Yeah, that's point number one on, you know, when we're thinking about we have a learning outcome for micro-credential and how we're going to sort of like do like exchange, right? Yeah, between these two worlds. Secondly, we also realize that up to this point in time, not everything may be suitable to be designed into a micro-credential. Not all things should be micro-credential this, micro-credential that. So maybe for now, but you know, if you see me next year, maybe we change the answer. Who knows, right? But we are trying to think that whatever that we can take it out, especially those two of the top tier of the pyramid right now, we're just going to try to develop into micro-credential and see how it fits, you know, into the traditional system. If not, just leave it, you know, as it is for now. When we talk about soft skill, yeah, it's good that you bring up the point because soft skill is the skill like a pearl, right? It's sort of like it have layer upon layer upon layer, and it takes a lot of time to develop, and it's an art and science, right? Also, it's different on, you say, company culture, like this company and that company, probably very totally different. The way they apply the soft skill is probably different too, right? With micro-credential, I think that it's just me only. I think that when we rebundle, the set of competency, we will see a stronger connection of how things built, like building a house with a solid foundation, because we are not forcing learner to do something based on a fixed time, do exam, and then go. You can pass this by just have 65% out of 100, and you having creative thinking like that. But it's proven by a real piece of work and evidence that this person is super creative in what contract, on what method, So this is a more evidence base for me in sort of like developing a person. So I think it's a good news for me if we can do that successfully. Yeah. To your second question, this one you should take. Micro-credential will make faculty have more work. Oh yeah, right? Yeah, you go.
You just pass it. This is happening all the time. Well, the second, yeah, actually she is right. I think this is a big issue that is in our university community. Now we have to change almost the ecosystem of faculty member. The way that they work, the way that we recognize their work, it will be totally different. But the good thing is you can integrate research, teaching and learning, and experience all together in order to make your university having the learning outcome that really, the degree that really matter. You have to do that. You have to use the current knowledge that from the research field to make it, transfer it, or make the student learning that thing. And then from your experience, if you don't have any experience, you cannot really think about competence or competency. You have no idea. Your only thing that you can do is publish the paper. Okay, so I think it's this is we try to do. So this is, we have to come back and change the policy of our human resource. Human, yeah. And this is what we try to do. And then we try to integrate, and we also looking for a new ecosystem that it's a university that different organizations have a different structure from what we have right now in order to make useful out of this thinking. And then the small point, but we still not success yet, okay? If we succeed, I will tell you later. Okay, but I think it's another thing that I just add a small point. When we unbundle, okay, as I mentioned, we unbundle to make our degree matter. The good thing is we will use that unbundle for the student who cannot catch up with their peer to repeat themselves, to do it again, but we use a different teaching method. If we use the same method, they won't understand anyway. So this is another module that we created when we unbundle. Even though the learning outcome is the same, but we use a different strategy because it's a different person, different ability to learn. So we use this for the people, for the student who cannot catch up, okay? And for the student who really go advanced, they can go further on the MC that really for employability or doing something that they really want to do. So then we bundle it again for someone that is a slow learner and a quick learner and those things. So we can support the diversity of the student, and at least when they graduate from KMUTT, 2.0 mean something, not just only the GPA, not just only the number. So this is what we're thinking in mind. คุณกิติทัศน์ คุณกิติทัศน์
Yeah, I will add after Kun Gittitouch, please.
Okay. Lady first?
No, that's okay.
That's
Kun
okay.
Gittitouch.
Kun Gittitouch first.
Okay.
I'll share a bit on onboarding the staffs in university.
Yeah.
I think like one of the biggest problem that changing the system is that the rewarding system of how we implement the system kind of contradicts with what we want to change. So when we throw in more jobs, they just don't want to do it because they're not being rewarded to the right job they're doing. That would be one of the, like, let's say, the initial roadblock transforming the change. And this reminds me of one of the, so Digital Promise has worked with, I think, multiple schools and university transforming the schools and onboarding teachers, and they shared a bit of their experience going through different phases of implementing this into the system. And they realized that the types of people entering the project, let's say we're trying to implement micro-credential into the whole school, the first group of people is different from the majority of the people. So it changes from those who started off from intrinsic motivation. So when they shared the same visions of what micro-credential would like to do, those are the first few people that would join the project. But as the project goes on and we have more successful smaller projects inside, let's say the university or school, then the system can change and they can reward the right work into the system. By then the school itself can scale from, let's say, 10% of the teachers into 80% of the teachers because the rewarding system worked as a whole inside the system. So I think if we were to learn from this, I would say it's a long journey itself, trying to change the system and taking micro-credentials into, let's say, the university. And we can't expect everyone to be on board initially. But the first few people that we should look for are those who share the same visions of, let's say, we would like to have a different journey for fast learner and slow learner. We would like to push the fast learner forward into being the employability, and we would like to push the slow learner to not being dragged by the fast learner themselves. So they share this idea, they buy in the idea of having micro-credentials to be one of the, an interesting alternative in developing a learning outcome, a different way of thinking. So those are the few group of teachers that we would like to work with first. And when we have a tangible outcome, then we use that as a university, turn into a reward system. And after that, then you can enforce other people and move from intrinsic motivations to extrinsic motivations instead. And I think, and that covers the whole journey that might take several years. It's not as simple as like several semesters and would work.
Thank you. Now, Kun Naowarat, please.
I kind of like the idea of rebundling it. First, I think micro-credential answer to what we had before in a working environment, that we struggle so much to design content in a micro learning way. Okay. And then in that micro learning way, if we try to cover the piece of knowledge, then we test it. Okay, the way to assess knowledge is simple. Okay, you all know it. And then in this knowledge, actually employer need knowledge to perform skill. And then we test the skill. Okay, in such a way that it's explicit. And then we don't stop there. Okay, if I rebundle the graduate from your university from one of the micro-credential, then I would ask him to actually apply to the job. We never stop there. We never stop at the your micro learning state that, okay, you already assess the skill. We don't do that. Okay, we just put them into work, and further then the skill built up. Okay, what is difficult? More difficult, I think I still struggle with it, is the attitude that comes with the work. In some industry, okay, like food industry, as a matter of fact, I never worked for CPO. I worked for CPF and then moved to leadership center at the group, CP group. Okay. I struggle with the attitude that people are so talented and they work so well and they hate the way we need them to actually wash their hand until it's clean and clear. Okay, so to protect that, to guarantee that our food is really hygienic. Okay, then that person cannot become, because the attitude of neglecting the cleanliness is not exhibit. So I still give the importance also to the attitude side, which university actually can build the attitude of that. It's difficult, I know, but it's workable, not in arena of learning in credential, in micro credential, but you can build that, add on to it. And I kind of see the other point of we are using e-learning, and we design e-learning, and we design learning part that is using already e-learning to combine. So we use as blended learning. I see the opportunity of us using your component as a blended learning. It's not becoming a problem. I hope, for instructor at the university to actually use it as helping hand. I see the opportunity of us doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kun Naowarat. I can work with CPF because I'm clean my hand all the time, so it's no problem. But maybe I'm too old to work, to back to work. But I think the good point is when you rebundle, and then the thing that I think MC doesn't mean that it have to happen at the university only. And come back to the Michael this morning, the recognition. When they go to work, they have a different environment, and maybe they earn some micro-credential from the work also. How can we recognize as part of the stack? And then they can earn more or the different things. So earn and learn from the micro-credential should be go along together. We cannot leave one out, okay? We have to have earn and learn to be able to recognize, because we know that today the future work is learning. It's not stop at university. It's all until your lifetime, especially for the working lifetime. Okay, so I think our time is up. Or any comment from the Zoom?
We still have
time.
15. Yeah, we still have 15 minutes. And I think there's one more question from the speaker there. Please.
Okay, me again. Let me all stand up so that everybody can see. Thank you again, Hasman from Malaysia. Klangjai, you sound like you have given up on higher education institutions. I hope not. But much of what you said about micro-credentials and what it can do for learners is equally applicable to higher education. I mean, competency-based, the new pedagogy, the need to think about how valuable these skills are for different stakeholders and so on and so forth. Those are still applicable. So I hope micro-credential doesn't come like, okay, we've given up on education, so let's take the other route where we can shape the new, because there's a lot of things that in education that can do, that we are talking about. And so that's just, hopefully, whatever you're doing also affects the curriculum. And I think the university mission has got tied down with the model they use to deliver the mission. And now suddenly we're talking about slightly different models, and the university is struggling with coping with this idea of a new model, micro-credential, unbundling or rebundling. The university has been for ages, centuries, structured, and it has tied the mission to a model, academic degrees. Suddenly when you talk about micro-learning and things like that, it doesn't click. It sounds very un-university, unprofessorial, and so on and so forth, right? So I think I'm from the academia, so I can sense the pain and the reservations that are coming through. But just going back, that's a commentary, then go back to you raised this issue of co-designing. And we heard from the morning IBM, and we heard it from here, from HRD, HRM. There's so much of micro-credential work that is being done in the industry. So is there opportunity as part of this micro-credential initiative to bring actually these credentials into the curriculum to ensure that the curriculum becomes or has a very strong industry skill component, which very often the university is unable to provide as quickly as the industry does? So can the university curriculum benefit from the micro-credentials so they can be embedded in the curriculum? So industry and academia working together to build the curriculum. And industry cannot now complain that the curriculum is not up to date because it actually points finger at them as well, right? So is there an opportunity to look at MC as a way to build new curriculum, which is co-designing? I mean, you talk about co-designing. And the other comment is you use the word ecosystem, right? Micro-credential cannot survive if just the university and industry wants it. What about the policymakers? What about the learner? Right? What about the funding bodies? What about the QA bodies? The recognition bodies, are they on board? I watch this very closely in Malaysia. Every day newspaper I look at and see, has any employer said, I need someone, if you don't have a college degree or diploma, it's okay. Just come in with a few micro-credentials and hire you. Till today, I've not seen anyone, not in Malaysia. Maybe it's happening in US, I think, and maybe in the IT sector. So the ecosystem is quite important to support this. Otherwise, we may get ahead of the ecosystem and put the learner in jeopardy, right? People might still looking at the college degree as the gold standard, which is still true in US, right? Still true in US. And hence this getting the ecosystem on board, not just employer and the university and the resistant academics, but everybody else in the circle. Do they understand the value, the need for, and they're able to support it? Funding is a key issue, right? So from the co-designing standpoint and also from the ecosystem support standpoint, I'm sure there are people from different parts of the ecosystem here. How does it appear as we move forward on my MC? Thank you.
Thank you, Hudson. Yes. I know that I put up in my presentation that we're trying to do micro-credential, and we put it sort of like a direction of it's a non-degree, right? We put it as that because it is very hard to do something with the degree. Degree is like you look at Eiffel Tower, right? It have a big structure, and it's just hard to change things. You can't just pull out one part and just put it back. It have interconnected relationship, and one have impact on another. But in reality, when we implement or execute micro-credential, it is, more or less our educator who think in the term of embedding micro-credential, within the degree. There are a lot of academic I'm working with using their own subject, and experimenting micro-credential within the subject, within the semester even, with their own student. Use it as to bypass some midterm exam or mini project they're using, they're doing, and it's been quite successful, And I used this opportunity to answer the first question from Eddie too, because Eddie asking what are the challenges working with micro-credential designer or the lecturer? I would say the why, the what, the how. So first of all, I have to convince them that this is, going to be a benefit for all. That's hard enough, right? The what is if, for a lot of us who, have little association with industry, it is very hard for them to know what are the problems they're trying to solve and what the specific competency would be. So setting up the environment for co-design to happen, it is quite a challenge. We need a lot of, pull a lot of connection. Working with Goblish, which is a startup, a fast-paced company with Kun Gittitouch, for example, is making the academic realize that, the micro-credential for a startup company is going to be like this, right? For example. So, another word of micro-credential that I also think important is for the academic, a lot of people, in our industry, we holding our content to the heart. Like, this is what I teach, is the theories, right? Yeah, it's very hard to think about what it is used for. Is it still using, do they using it now, or, another factor that I also think important, and is also a big challenge, is when we have to try to sort of like convince the teacher that we going to try to steer away from exam as the way to assess the specific competency, and using real work or like the evidence from work. It is quite hard for them because it's easier using a total score and giving a grade than using performance-based, rubric-based assessment. Yeah.
Okay.
There's another question from the gentleman over there.
Yes, sorry. Roger from ASEAN Secretariat. Thank you very much for the fruitful discussion so far. I do agree with all of what you've mentioned. I'm just curious. First, I've been talking about the learning block approach, particularly utilizing the name Lego as a Lego block to illustrate learning outcomes and building it into different shapes, which represents qualifications. That's one aspect. Second aspect is we've been talking about employability and skills and competencies. When what I see in terms of the possibilities of micro-credentials is the notion of the 4 pillars of learning put forward by UNESCO. Learning to do, learning to live with one another, learning to learn, and learning to know. Next is the notion of not just unbundling and rebundling, but actually utilizing the learning blocks and competencies to build something which is not already built. So the skills and competencies and learning that you actually achieve through these micro-credentials and micro-learnings can actually be built into qualifications, not just based on a traditional qualification which we unbundle and rebundle. And the learning can be different. The problem is recognition by industry, by the higher education sector is still challenging. But we have to look into it when the world is talking about lifelong learning, recognition of prior learning, and personalized learning. We have to look into micro-credentials and the possibility and power of micro-credentials to contribute to not only lifelong learning, but also personal development, human development beyond skills and competencies. So when we look into micro-credentials now and 10 years from now, it's totally going to be different when we have more buy-in from different stakeholders, not just higher education institutions or industry. Even the learners and the teachers will actually contribute. The important thing there is, how do we start this conversation and move it towards broader aspects to human development and contributing to achieving sustainable development? Because I think micro-credentials has that power to change the world. Well, not everything, but at least it does have, it presents opportunities to change global and regional challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And let's move on to the questions from the online audience. The questions is for Dr. Klangjai. How is KMUTT sharing and involving other Thai universities? I have been pushing the idea to my university, but have a little support.
Can I answer this question. The support from my university, you say?
No, I think it's kind of sharing or involving with others, probably a best practice or I don't know. I don't think it's about the budgetary, but yeah. Any recommendation or?
The best practice is okay, right? The best practice is okay, we can share. And we also...
Yes, we can share everything actually, except the budget.
Oh, okay.
we even can share the platform that we build. We not really
probably.
try to build this one for KMUTT only. We welcome all university and all industry sector to help us to build it on.
Yes, and it's probably one of the reasons why we are here today, because it is impossible that one small university can embarking on this journey on our own. We need the ecosystem, as Hassan was saying, like we need the whole ecosystem. And we also, seriously, we need a lot of help. We don't know, everything, not an expert in every field. Yeah. So our platform are available for everyone. Our know-how that we know until, from the first day until today are also available for everyone. Yeah. Whatever support that you want to sort of like us to hold your hands, discussing about the possibility for collaboration. Yeah, everything is possible. Yeah.
Okay.
But Messi can support us.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. The next question is for all the speakers. There is a major tension in Thai at the university level. The traditional method of accreditation focus on a depth and broad knowledge, but job opening or focus on specific skills that accreditation teams tend to overlook it. So how to fix it, or what is the solution that you recommended?
Can I have point of view from outsider first?
Yeah, please.
I don't think the solution, there's a right solution or silver bullet right now. And actually, that's one of the reasons why MC existed right now. I try to resolve the problem that the traditional system doesn't generate the students that can work for the corporate. And for this system to change, to adopt the changes, they cannot do it fast enough, so they have a smaller projects. They have MC instead to tackle this problem. But I think to extend the comments further, and I think it's a very interesting moment in times right now that everyone started to question the education system that's happening right now. So everyone sees the problem, and everyone is on to a race to find the right solution. So I think that the state right now is that there is no correct solution, or there's no a single solution that would work in every, let's say, country or every society, because different country has different problem they're facing right now. For example, in Thailand, one of the problems we're going to face right now is the shrinking of the population. So university will have less students enrolling in. However, they see that the reskilling or the workforce becoming the students again is the future of the university themselves. So focusing on reskilling or upskilling might be their focus. But for countries or university that still don't have problem of new enrollments, then their focus will be different, and the solution that they provide might be different. So right now, I think the problem is apparent. The way to resolving this will not be a single solution anymore, and anything could be the future, and experimenting or trying out and testing something else would be the way to go right now. So I think the most important part right now is understanding the process and adopting the process that change is inevitable in a way, but there are things that has its own strength in different contexts that we have to realize and not just throw away any of the solution we're having at hand.
Khun Naowarat, do you have any comment?
I think it's a never-ending solution to that. Okay, we have to go bits by bits, and what university in Thailand actually overcome the obstacle of getting people on board with individual organization to work with. I think let me tell you a story of one university that when I worked with the stock exchange as the Thailand Security Institute, we actually need a golden body, lots of body, about 500 of golden bodies. We call them golden bodies in that age. Okay, that is a certified person to actually sell stock and advise the stock and bond. So issue out a certificate, building block like micro learning in that age to actually work with university, and university actually embrace it into the curriculum. So side by side, the university are teaching economy, okay, and also taking the content of the certificate. In those days, I wish we have micro-credential, okay, taking the certificate, the content, and design in such a way that it assess the attitude, the knowledge, skills, and then build in some assessment of a behavioral way of assessing it. When they graduate, partly they earn a certificate of becoming an advisor, becoming an stock advisor, stock seller or bond sellers. So I think the solution is helping to create 500 golden body into the industry. Those who are certificate, those who are not go out and deceive people in the arena in those days. So we get those into the workplace. And so it solves the problem of not having people who have knowledge and skills to actually provide the advising to investor. I think it's an effort, that university and organization working side by side, taking the issue, taking the burning platform to actually try to solve it. And I hope that provide one example, which I know that it's outdated, but it's an effort that counts between both sides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's I think its time is up, but something that maybe we don't have the answer for all the questions, but thing that stunned into my head right now is the university system is going to be the legacy for the whole of my life and my next generation life or my youngest life or something. Back 150 years ago, we don't have any university like this. We don't have a system like this. So we are going to create a new one. We are going to start from the scratch. Can we do that? If we don't have that, we don't call university, we don't call curriculum, we don't call this credential. Is it our problem still there or it's gone? And then something that we try to do is maybe a new human capital that will help the whole world, not just only to save university to last forever. So I think I would like to all of you to think about this question, and then otherwise we cannot answer all the questions. We don't have the right question, the right answer, and then the answer right now may be different later on also. So thank you very much for you taking your time, and then we think that you will enjoy your lunch. And thank you, Kun Gittitouch. Thank you, Dr. Klangjai, and thank you, Kun Naowarat. And thank you all the audience that is on the Zoom that being with us for the three hour, I think. Thank you very much.